Hi everybody. So it's the last day of November and we made it. Yay. And today I'm going to review There by Tommy Orange. But I will, it is because November is Native American History Month. So I always try to read a book by an Indigenous author for the month, at least one, maybe more, if I get time. I'll get to that in a minute. I do want to talk about the week I've had. So I was supposed to have my eviction hearing on Monday, but mysteriously, my landlord didn't get the notice of hearing. Anybody who ever said that the landlord-tenant board wasn't on the side of tenants, even accidentally, is okay. And granted, no, they're generally not on the side of tenants, but this time it worked in my favor. They're complete screw up. Sorry, my eyes itchy. I had to turn off the camera for a second. So we ended up not having the hearing. It's been postponed again, so I've got another month at least. Yay. One more time. The landlords are dead. The building's up for sale, and the property manager is resigning. So why does anybody still care? I mean, at this point, it's a habit. Like, they've been going through this process for almost 3 years, trying with this nonsense. Anyway, I shouldn't talk too much about it, but this week was a little bit of good news, at least for another, month or so. Anyway, and the other thing in good news, speaking of good news, so I've decided I'm going to participate in the Xmas Readathon, and it's going to be hosted. There's a number of channels who are hosting it. Kelly Hooked on Books, Slime. Oh, what is her name? I can never remember her name. It's Slime and Slashers. That's it. There's about maybe 5 or 6 different channels that are hosting it. So I think it's going to be a very, very fun time. And sorry, I'm clicking through the channels here. I don't know what books I'm going to read because I'm still going through trying to catch up on the books that I already own without buying new ones. But the reading prompts are Black Christmas, reading a cult book or story featuring black magic, etc. Krampus, read a creature feature or a book/story featuring a monster. A Christmas Carol, read a book featuring a ghost or a haunting of some kind. Read a gifted book. Mood read, which is just whatever goes. Sleigh Bells, read a slasher book/story. Winter Wonderland, read a book set in winter. Santa's Little Helper, read a middle grade book. Reindeer Ride, read a translated book or a translated work or a book written by a non-US author. Now, I'm not sure what non-US author means. Just somebody from another country. Like, could I read a book by a Canadian author? Because, there's quite a lot of them, but maybe not. I don't know. And then the group read is Autumn Bleeds into Winter by Jeff Strand. Now, that's a good one for this time of year. And if you'll remember, I don't know if you remember, but last year I did review that one on my channel. So that's a pretty good read. It's pretty quick. And it's got a nice little twisty kind of Scooby-Doo quality to it. It's a lot of fun. So I don't know what books exactly I'm going to be reading, but I am going to be going through some, just some of the books that I have. And as I review them, I'll say, yeah, this is part of the Xmas Readathon. The other thing that I'd like to participate in is there's a Cthulhu Christmas, I guess, going around. And, I make no bones about the fact that I don't like Lovecraft. But one of the books on my TBR in the pile is the collected works of Lovecraft. So I'd like to start reading some of that, just to, bring it down. Bring down the pile, I guess, a little bit. So that'll be part of my plans. All right, now to the main event. So for Native American History Month, I read There by Tommy Orange. I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now my reasoning is, okay, Penguin House, what the hell? You're supposed to be professionals, and you still made a mistake with Lay and Lie. Like, what the hell? And yes, that is becoming, that's one of the things, like, if you just want to irk me, just use it incorrectly. And probably because I had to learn it, it was really hard learned for me. And now when I see it everywhere, it's just one of those things that just gets right under my skin. It's like, especially, I mean, Penguin House, it's like a professional, that's one of the big five. I mean, they would never publish me, and yet my grammar is a little bit better than theirs. That doesn't make any sense. All right, so anyway, that's just my little nitpick aside. So Tommy Orange is a Native American author. I think he said Cheyenne and Arapaho from Oakland, California. And very much write what you know, because one of the characters, I don't know if it's Dean or Dene, Dene, is participating or heading a project where he is going around and just recording different people's stories and what the story is about, what it means to be an urban native in modern times. The book was shortlisted for the Pulitzer, and the prologue, it introduces us to the main conceit, I guess is the word, or the main theme that is gonna just keep being repeated throughout the book, is most people's idea of what it means to be native, even Indigenous people themselves. It's rooted in the past. And so, I mean, there's the stereotypes, right? The braids and the buckskin and the, paint with all the colors of the wind and all that stuff. But then there's there's the traditions, there's the stories, there's the singing, there's the way that the things that they believe about the world around them and their community and family and so on. But these things are rooted in the past. But the vast majority of Native people live in cities. So where does that leave urban natives with who are living their lives and yet still identifying as Indigenous? And how do these people, or like, how does everybody identify, and how do they live their lives and yet still stay true to their roots? This sort of question. Now I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and probably doing it very badly. So I do apologize. So the prologue introduces us to the ugly, the horrific, the sad history of just even the tiniest surface stories of Native American genocide when the colonizers arrived. And the stories that the Native people tell about the first Thanksgiving, for example, that, the preacher man shows up with food, invites everybody, and 200 of them get sick with some kind of poisoning. And there's also the book is, I mean, obviously, as a white person, especially as a white person with a couple of Cree great-grandmas, it's a hard read as, knowing to being part of that colonizing element. But this also happened hundreds of years before I ever was a spark in somebody's eye. So it's one of those things you just sort of, you feel bad about, but you go along with it. But what are you supposed to do, right? And that's one of the questions is we read the stories and we hear these terrible things, but what can we do about it? No idea. Although I do have a friend, just as an aside, I do have a friend who is, she's one of those Native ladies who looks absolutely, she's got blonde hair and green eyes. She does not look anything like a Native person. And you wouldn't know until you listen to her talk. But I didn't even know this was a thing, but there was some kind of, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the something or other doctrine. And what it basically means is that the church is allowed to go in and claim any land they want for the crown. And it was based on that principle that most of the European settlers came in and just claimed the indigenous lands. But it's never, ever been revoked hundreds of years later. So, yeah, why aren't we doing something about this? Anyway, and it also, I mean, it really does look at just the ineffectiveness of the attempts at genocide, the idea of kill the Indian, and if we can't kill them, then we try to indoctrinate them and make them like us, but we did a really piss poor job of it. So now what we have and what is explored in this book is a whole group of people who are unmoored because they don't have a collective identity, and they can't connect with the greater community, and they don't really know where they stand. And everything that belonged to them was taken from them. So now they just sort of pile on addictions and, try to live and be happy, but underneath it, there's just this simmering resentment, which is totally understandable, right? So anyway, I don't want to say anything that's going to be offensive, but I thought that this book was interesting, especially so plot-wise, it's a pretty loose connection. It's a really simple plot. Each chapter is one of the characters, and they are moving towards a powwow where a couple of the characters, they've heard about it, and they heard that there's going to be cash prizes for the dances, so they decide they're going to rob this powwow, and they make a plastic, they print a plastic gun, and they bring it in. And then each of the characters is sort of loosely connected through family and through being part of the Native community. And that's really, really it. It's really a very simple plot. So each of the characters, most of the characters actually sort of have a family connection. So you've got Jackie and Opal, who are sisters. And then Henry, who is the father of Edwin and who impregnated Jackie in 1970 when their mother, Jackie's mother, Jackie and Opal's mother, took them to the American Indian, it was an occupation, they occupied Alcatraz for a brief time in 1970. And that was when they met Henry, and Henry impregnated Jackie, and Jackie gave birth to Blue, who she gave away when she was born. And Henry also is the father of Edwin, and Edwin and Blue work together at the Indian Center in Oakland, and they're part of the organizer, the company they're part of organizing the powwow. And then there's Tony, who has I thought this was really interesting too. He's got fetal alcohol syndrome. We almost never, ever hear about characters who are born with disabilities like that. And then there's a number of other characters as well. Just trying to remember what the characters' names all are, because there's a whole bunch of them, and they're all kind of loosely connected. And so each of the and then another important character is, it's spelled Dene, so I don't know if it's Dean or Dene. But he is putting together a documentary / podcast / something. It's a project where he is recording stories told by Native people about what it means to be Native. And he gets a grant, and I thought it was, and probably again, it's a write what you know situation. Tommy Orange did this sort of thing where he was recording and archiving stories, and he really he kind of took to task the whole grant process too, which I thought was I thought it was a little bit of snark going on there, but it's true. If you've ever been involved with writing grant proposals or asking for money, it's a whole culture in itself. So I don't know what else to say about the book. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it asked some very interesting questions about about identity and about how does somebody identify as Native or not, and how do urban natives navigate this modern world and still try to identify with being Native, because that's the world that we live in today. I mean, we have a lot of there's a whole idea of identity politics, but it seems like, and this is again, I don't want to be offensive by trying to speak for somebody, but I think that when your identity has been taken from you, I mean, even if it was hundreds of years ago, how do you reconcile who you are with what's, with trying to live in a world that both fetishizes you and has tried to kill you? I mean, that can't be a good space to live in. And I also was kind of pleased when they talked about pretendians, which are white people who have absolutely no Native ancestry, but still trying to claim some kind of something like that. But then he also mentions all the people coming together, status Indians, non-status Indians, and so on. And 1/32nd, which is kind of the joke about, people try to claim that they have a little bit. And it always does make me cringe, because I actually do have a couple of Cree great-great-grandmas who, my cousin sends me a DM a couple months ago, and he's like, "Are we Native?" I said, "No, we're what's known as white with an interesting backstory." And I told him about how our grandfather, Papa George, my cousin is my mother's brother's son, and Papa George's mother was Métis, and her mother was full-blooded Cree. Her name was Hannah, and her father was Métis. His mother was a Cree lady named Shinokwa. So this is our Cree great-great and great-great-great grandmas. But I always kind of flinch when people talk about being, pretendian, because it sounds like I'm doing that too. But no, it's just a family tree kind of thing, right? And it's always hard to try and do that research or talk to anybody about it, because on the one hand, nobody cares. I mean, except me, obviously. It's my family. On the other hand, it sounds like I'm trying to, be a white person taking over or something, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to figure out where this stuff is, right? And especially researching Métis, kind of a Métis identity, is these records aren't available anymore, right? So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Just talking about myself, probably because I'm not sure what else I should be saying about the book. It's a pretty simple story, but there's layers and layers and layers of questions of the characters' identities. Now, I do wish that the plot had maybe come to more, because we do spend a lot of time getting the characters into one place, but then we see almost nothing of the powwow or what what happens when they're there. Like, it's over so quickly. So I found it ended pretty abruptly. And then we also spend time with all these characters just to have them shot and killed on the last page. And I find endings like that to be very frustrating. But then the characters that do end up living, they all kind of end up in the same place together. And it's like, well, what happened to them, right? I'd like to know. Was what we were building towards, like, did it eventually come to fruition? Did they find out who they are? What, and the book, I think, asks more questions than it answers. So anyway, 4.5 out of 5 stars. There by Tommy Orange. It was very readable, very interesting questions. Really liked the characters. And I really appreciated and could relate to some of the questions about identity that it asks. But I just wish there was a little bit better of an ending. That's all. So I hope, yeah. Well, anyway, hope you're reading lots of horror. Have a great day.